Oh, this is when we do the dance, folks. This is when we do the dance of waiting for the internet to say, yeah. Is the internet going to say, yeah? Is it going to say, yeah? Hopefully it says, yeah. There's a delay. Oh, whoa. Look who won. Rockfin in a solid first today. Rockfin, well, Twitter's always first, but Rockfin second. Oh, YouTube, there you are. Nice of you to join us, YouTube. Nice of you to decide. Wow, Rockfin crushed YouTube today. See, here's the thing. I don't have an executive producer. I am my own one-man shop, so to speak. And so I need to wait to make sure everything is live before I can officially be like, yeah, we're live. And I know there's a delay. And I know some of you, you're like, man, why can't you do that ahead? I can't because I don't have anyway. Look, but I always mention what's first and what's not first. And man, Rockfin, usually they're neck and neck, but Rockfin just owned on YouTube today. Rockfin was so much faster. But what's up, everybody? Good afternoon to all my East Coasters. My guest today is an East Coaster. Good morning to everybody like me. I've been doing that thing where I've been exercising in the morning. Feels weird. I only do it once or twice a week, or maybe up to 3 times. No, more like twice. Tuesday and Wednesday. That's what I do. It feels weird. And good evening if you're in an evening time zone. And to everyone in the future, Australia, New Zealand, solve climate change for the rest of us. It's on you. You have an extra day of science. Just text me what we got to do, and I'll get to it. Shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. Our friends over at Indie Left. Indie Left is the only place to find all this stuff from all the content creators you know and love. They have a platform. They update it twice a day. They kind of curate the news for you. They make it easy. How cool is that? To find out everything they got going on and to subscribe to their Discord community, check them out at independentleft.media. That's independentleft.media. My guest today, I am so excited to have her. I was on her podcast recently, and I had an amazing time. And she is part of the Fred Hampton Leftists and host of the Sabby Sabs podcast. Please welcome to the show, Sabrina Salvati. Sabrina, how are you?
Hey, Ron. How's it going?
You have such a pretty name. I bet you get that all the time.
I do. Yeah.
Sabrina Salvati. Is that so? That's an Italian last name, right?
Yep.
Okay. So are you part Italian? What's the situation there?
I'm not. That's so funny. People either ask me that or they'll ask me if I'm Latina. Salvati is my married name. So my husband's Italian. So that's where that comes from.
Right on. All right. Well, it's a lovely name. I'm sure you get that all the time. I like my Rob Placone. I'm okay with that. I like it. It flows pretty easily. I kind of dig my name too. So we're the groovy name duo this morning, I think. Right? Is that fair?
That's fair.
So thanks for doing the show today. I got some headlines for you, and then we're going to talk about everything you got going on. And we'll start here. So this hit the news yesterday, and I don't know. Once again, like anything that looks like kind of good news when it comes to the political sphere, I always greet it with very, 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 underline very a couple more times, cautious optimism. But here we go. So Biden, let's get up to the headline. This is from Alaska. Biden is to suspend Trump Arctic drilling leases. So this is from the BBC. U.S. President Joe Biden's administration will suspend oil and gas leases in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge pending an environmental review. I'm sure the review is going to say it's just fine. Why do they need an environmental review? Drilling in the Arctic is really frickin' bad. Drilling anywhere, really frickin' bad. It causes earthquakes. It pollutes water wells. It's not safe. And for what little energy is extracted from it, it ain't worth it. And by the way, none of that energy stays domestic. A bunch of CEOs export it. So really, it's just to enrich a bunch of CEOs and destroy our planet in the meantime. You don't need an environmental review. We've already had the environmental review. But anyway, not trying to detract from the fact that this is a good thing. They're suspending oil and gas leases. Now, the move reverses former President Donald Trump's decision to sell oil leases in the refuge to expand fossil fuel and mineral development. Now, Obama pursued drilling in the Arctic as well. So it's not like this is
Mhm.
something that just started with Trump. I mean, Obama did that too. And Bush, even before that was a drill baby drill guy as well. So, um, and the article mentions the giant Alaskan wilderness is home to many important species, including polar bears, caribou, and the wolves. So, Sabrina, what do you think? Is this just temporary and they're going to pull the wool over our eyes later? Is this reason for some optimism? Is this an actual systemic shift? What do you think?
Considering it's the Biden administration, I just wouldn't get my hopes up because
Sure.
they are notorious for saying that they're going to do something, but we just have to wait and see if it actually happens. They're also really good about, well, let's research that. Let's investigate that instead of like, no, just do it. Like just do it. Like what do you need to research anymore? You know this is a problem for the environment. There's nothing you need to research. Just stop doing it. So he's really good at that. Like I said, he's a good talker. um, Not as good as Obama was, but he's good at saying that we should do things like with student loan debt. We should do this, but as you see, he's not doing it.
So, one thing that I will say is, I mean, first of all, Biden did not give lip service to ending things like fracking. That was one of the few things he went to the mat for. He said, I mean, on the
Mhm.
campaign trail, he was like, "I will not ban fracking." He was passionate about that. Um, and of course, Trump was, no better on that. I mean, Trump was, terrible. I mean, Trump was horrible for the environment, absolutely horrible. I mean, he expanded Arctic drilling. What was that other thing he did? He wanted to like allow them to go into parks and other like kind of sensitive areas. I mean, Trump was okay with that. So Trump was terrible. Um and then Biden got in. Now, one thing I will say, and this is kind of hoping for the best, is you are starting to see a shift, albeit a small one, in the oligarchs and the capitalists. They're starting to realize, well, this is our planet too.
Mhm.
And, I mean, even you see some of these Wall Street firms who are kind of saying we're not going to invest in any more oil and gas exploration. And they're not doing it because they're moral people necessarily. They're doing it because they realize that this way of doing things is going away. They're realizing that, and they realize there's going to be another way for them to, make money basically. And, I can live with that if they're not destroying the planet completely like we are now.
Right.
So I'm hoping that maybe that's signs of a shift, but kind of like you're saying, I'm not getting my hopes up.
Right. It's the same thing with taking the troops out of Iraq. Like he said, we're going to do that, or they're going to do that by September. So again, I'm just going to like wait and see because he said that before when he was a part of the Obama administration. That was supposed to happen a couple years ago. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all we could do is just kind of wait and see. And again, I'm glad these things are happening. Like, I'm not trying to say like, oh, well, blah blah blah, but cautious optimism is important. I mean, because it's
Mhm.
like, yes, Joe Biden shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. That was good. I'm glad he did that. But he also has been meeting with Justin Trudeau, who really wants that Keystone XL pipeline. And Biden has not been a friend of the environment throughout like a 40-some year history. So I mean, again, it's good, but it's not like you can just be like Keystone XL pipeline. We won that one. It's over now. No, it ain't over.
Right.
Arctic drilling. We won that one. No, it ain't over. This is good, and hopefully this is the sign of something systemic. Because again, Biden's not against drilling. He's made that very clear. He's fine with it. In fact, he's for it. I mean, he went to the mat for fracking. He went to the mat against the Green New Deal, and he went to the mat. That those were the main things. I mean, what else did he go to the mat for? Really? I mean, everything else he just had nothing to say. I'm not
Right.
Trump. I mean, that
Right.
that was his big. I'm not going to ban fracking. I mean, he said it. He yelled it from the rafters for everybody to hear.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically like, oh, and Medicare for all. He was really big against that too.
Good call. Yes, he'll veto
And
it.
yeah, he wanted to expand Obamacare, but now I don't hear them talking about that much anymore.
You know why I think that is? Because no one knows what the fuck that means. Do you know what it means? I mean, what is it? What is expand? What does that mean?
I don't know. That's a good question. He didn't really explain.
No, they never do. And because in reality, the way to quote expand Obamacare is which by the way, it's Romney care. It's Mitt Romney's plan. The way to expand it is to have a single payer universal system. That's the way to expand. Like what do you we're only gonna leave 15 million people out instead of 30. Although, hey, look at what the Republicans when it was up to them to come up with a healthcare plan, they came up with the AHCA, which was literally an anti-healthcare plan. That's what it should have been called, Anti-Healthcare Association. That's not what it actually stood for, but that's what it should have stood for because it literally took healthcare away from more people. And I think that's the biggest evidence of why the duopoly is completely screwed beyond repair. When you have these utterly repulsive choices, you are going to have one side that offers you nothing, which is the Democrats, and another side that offers you the opposite of what they're trying to. Here's a healthcare bill that takes healthcare away from people. That's not a democracy. That's a scam.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think the best way that we can go about doing this at this point is doing it or trying to do it at the state level, what whole Washington's like trying to do right now. I think we have a better shot of getting that passed, similar to what they did with marijuana. And now you see like several states have passed that. So I think that might be the strategy or the way to go right now, because we've tried to do it at the federal level. And as you see, like Biden is like, no, we're not going to do Medicare for all. So we can't really like rely or wait on the federal government to do it. I don't think they're going to. And I think maybe the state level is the way to go.
No, I think so too from a political strategy standpoint. Now, as many folks will point out, even people fighting at the state level, it's not the most ideal way. We'd be much better off if something happened federally. But I just don't see it happening that way. I agree with you. Like I think that's the only way to get it is going one state at a time, pretty much, and then eventually that'll lead to federal policy.
Yep.
Like pot, and again, not the most ideal way to get there, but the way I see it, unless you want to wait forever, it's our only shot. And even what we're both describing will take a while. It's not like that's going to be like, oh, in a couple weeks we nailed this thing. No, that's going to take a while. But I think waiting for something at the federal, you'll be waiting even longer. Because I think one thing we learned from 2020, they're not going to let us have a transformational president anytime soon. Maybe not in either of our lifetimes.
No. Every time we have someone like Bernie that runs, the biggest problem that we're going to run into is the DNC.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And going on this, and then I want to get to another headline, but I'm excited to read Dennis Kucinich's new book. I forget what it's called even, actually. That's how stoked I am. But no, I am excited because, Dennis Kucinich, and again, he's not perfect. No politician is. But Dennis Kucinich, I think, is an excellent example of the hard lesson in American politics where if you have good intentions, at least at the federal level, if you have good intentions, they either break that, they either just extract that out of you and get you to play the game, or they just ostracize you until they can get rid of you.
Yep.
And I think he is a prime example of that. They ostracized him until they could get rid of him. And eventually they did. Eventually they were finally able to get rid of that guy. That guy, went to the mat for progressive issues his entire career, and they finally were able to get rid of him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like also the media is not in our favor either. That's a big part of the problem is that most people still watch CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, and they're not going to say good things about progressive candidates unless progressive candidates are doing establishment work like the Squad right now.
What's your take on the Squad?
Oh my gosh, Ron. I have to tell you, it's such a disappointment.
Haven't you seen the tweets, though? That doesn't make you feel great?
No, no, I know. It's like they can tweet these things, but when it's time to vote on them, they don't, or they'll vote present. That's my favorite one. They're just not doing what they said they were going to do. They're acting like establishment Democrats. So at this point, I'm just like, what was the point of running a grassroots campaign if you were just going to be just like corporate Democrats? You should have just ran a campaign like corporate Democrats do. It doesn't make any sense.
That present vote thing was so, I mean, how more in your face can it get than that? By one vote, it went through by one vote, and just enough voted present. And if you listen to AOC's statement, and I know three of them voted present. I've only heard AOC's statement, so I didn't hear Rashida Tlaib or who was the other person that voted present?
Jamal Bowman.
Yeah, so I haven't heard either of their statements, so I can't speak to what they had to say about it. The only one I heard was AOC's, and you listen to that and you kind of realize like she knows this was wrong.
Yep.
Like she knows, and she's not apologizing for it. She's not, she rattled off a bunch of reasons why she should have voted against that thing. And she was right, by the way. All the reasons she was saying why she shouldn't have voted for it. She was right. She shouldn't have voted for it. And she just gave you a bunch of reasons why she shouldn't have. And then she glossed over these reasons that made her vote present. And by the way, the reason she was giving, like, well, I don't want to affect cops' overtime or healthcare or this or that. Those reasons, Ilhan Omar, her colleague who did vote no on it, Ilhan Omar said those aren't even legit reasons. It's not even accomplishing that. So what the heck?
I'm all for having progressives in Congress and in the Senate, but if they're not going to push on progressive issues and legislation, then what are they there for?
To tweet nice things, apparently. they're there to tweet nice things and to, I mean, honestly, and it's not, I mean, again, it goes back to that lesson where it's like, if you have good intentions, either they extract that from you or they're going to get rid of you. One of the two things is going to happen. And that's how the duopoly works. And it's just, it's something I don't see. And that's why I don't really feel like reforming, quote unquote, the Democratic Party is an option, or, if it is, it's going to take longer time than we have. I mean, it would take how long? I mean, it's, it's something, but I want to go here now. So this is some good news, and it takes us over to Seattle, Washington. Huge news out of Washington State. King County, which is the county where Seattle is, that includes Seattle and home to Amazon and Microsoft, has voted to ban government use of face surveillance, aka facial recognition technology. An entire county-wide ban. Law enforcement can't use it. Government can't use it. They voted to ban it. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Full admission here, I was part of a ban facial recognition campaign along with Fight for the Future. Facial recognition surveillance. It is, first of all, it is unnecessary. It never helps solve any crimes or anything like that. It's just overreaching authoritarian surveillance on people. They have mismatches up to 98% of the time. The mismatches are usually amidst Black and brown people because there's a racial bias in this stuff. It is proven. I mean, cops use it to find information on exes. They use it to target people at protests. There's no reason for this. There's just no reason for it to be used at all. So this is good news. And shout out to all the digital rights organizations, EFF, Fight for the Future, and all the organizations or all those organizations that have been fighting for this. And we got it in the first county. And by the way, another place where I believe it's banned is near you in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Yes, that's one thing I will say. Like Seattle and Massachusetts, we are really good at leading the way, I think, on a lot of issues. I mean, like Washington State, like I said, they are leading the movement in, getting like Medicare for all. They started that lead after, Bernie dropped out. And in reference to like gay marriage, Massachusetts, like we were the first ones to pass that. So we're really good at leading the way for a lot of these issues. I think a lot of people, when they think about the facial recognition, they think it's going to be like that show, Person of Interest. I don't know if you ever saw that show where like they had like
No,
the
but
surveil. That show was actually really good, but like they had like facial recognition surveillance, and that's how they would find people like criminals or suspects. And people think that it's going to be like that, but it's actually not that detailed. Like you said, a lot of times you can't even make out the faces completely. And then it gives them like security information. It targets a certain group of people. I just don't think it's a good idea.
yeah, I mean, it's just a blatant overreach. And I mean, they
Mhm.
did this thing in London where they were just randomly scanning people to just see if anyone had an arrest warrant. Uh, I mean, just imagine if they did something like that. I mean, it's bad enough they did it in London. Imagine if they did that in a place as violent as the United States, where
Right.
you have a police force who just shoots first and asks never, and they're just randomly using this software. They're going to get mismatches up to 98% of the time,
Yeah.
and then they start doing something about it. I mean, it would be honestly, and I'm not even trying, like, I'm not even embellishing here. It'd be chaos. It would be chaos. It'd be, and there would be, it'd be a disaster. And so, yeah, there's no reason for this stuff. There's just absolutely. Oh, and by the way, all the databases are like super susceptible to hacking. So they've had
Mhm.
like borders that have been hacked already, where that sensitive information has gotten into who knows whose hands. I mean, that stuff happens all the time. So it's like there's this poorly secured data, this poorly orchestrated technology in general, and it's used for the worst means 100% of the time.
Right. No, I agree. The other problem is too is that it targets people who may already have a record, but they've already served their time,
Hmm.
and then that wouldn't be fair to them. It's like they're gonna feed into this a lot quickly and a lot easier than other people. So it's just I don't know. The government, they always want to watch us. They always want to spy on us. It's just weird.
Weird's one way to put it. It's it's something. I mean, but hey, King County, thank you for leading the way.
Mhm.
And it's also interesting to note what's one thing that's really prominent in King County, as the EFF tweet pointed out: big tech, Amazon, Microsoft. I think Nintendo is still up there too.
Yep.
And the people who work for those places, they live there. And they all unanimously decided no.
Right.
So if the top tech people in the country are saying this is bad, the rest of us should probably listen.
Agreed. That's a big sign.
Right? So I'm going to stay in your neck of the woods, Massachusetts, which happy springtime, by the way. Well, actually, it's summer now. It's June.
Yeah, but yesterday, like the other day, it was like 40 degrees, and it
Right.
was like 90 degrees like the day before that. So
They're just
now it's
messing with
like
you.
77, so we're where we should be.
Yeah, you're just having a nice Massachusetts, New England summer.
Mhm.
Sometimes I summer in New England. Where So check this out. This is from Ed Markey. What's your take on Ed Markey? Let's start there. Let me ask you.
So Ed Markey, I feel like he's had like good policies, but there's also things that he's done in his past as a politician that are not okay.
Sure.
But you can't, change the past. But some people ask, like, do I really consider him to be a leftist per se? Kind of. He was for the Green New Deal, but he wasn't always this progressive, I would say. But I think what gave him the edge is that he was running against Joe Kennedy, who I really can't stand. And Joe Kennedy didn't really have a reason as for why he was running, because I watched those debates. And what really helped Ed Markey win was young people, young college students, young people really turned out for him because he was actually losing in the polls before that debate. And then after that debate, they were tied. And it was young people who came out to the polls that pushed him over and helped him win. So I was just happy that another Kennedy was just like not given a position because he was a Kennedy.
I hear you. And what does that say about Joe Kennedy too, by the way? I mean, how much of a corporate stooge did that guy have to feel like where you get trounced by a guy, and I think your assessment of Ed Markey is 100% fair. He has been on the forefront of some good policy, and I'll give him credit there, but he's not some big lefty, and he definitely has some establishment tinge on him because he's been in the game for so freaking long. And what's it saying when you're a young person? I mean, Joe Kennedy's what, like 38, 39, something like that?
Yeah.
You're a young person trying to enter the game, and you get trounced because of other young people saying, we need the more progressive option. We're going with the guy who's been in DC for frickin' ever. We're going with that guy. Like that's the better. And he was. I mean, Ed Markey was a far better choice than Joe Kennedy. I mean, way better. Like, there's no comparison even. I mean, I even, my wife is from Massachusetts. I even mentioned to her, I was like, I hope your family is voting for Markey to keep Kennedy out of there. Because here's some of the things that Ed Markey does. This is one of them. Now, here's another interesting thing about Ed Markey. He's pretty good on a lot of digital rights issues. And it's probably just because he listens to the right people on these things. He listens, you don't have to be a tech expert to have a good grasp on digital rights and to, vote for the right kind of policies and pursue the right kind of policies. You just need to listen to the right frickin' people, which Ed Markey does compared to a lot of other people in Washington. Is he perfect? Of course not. But compared to a lot of other people in Washington, he's at least good on some issues, and here's one of them. A new bill would open up big tech's hood, quote unquote, and it would make companies explain how they decide which content to show. A new federal bill seeks to demystify how social media platforms determine which posts users see without touching a law that has become a lightning rod in Congress. Now, the law they're referring to is Section 230. We talk about Section 230 a lot on this show. Section 230 is basically that thing that guarantees free speech on the internet, and it applies to all users in the internet and all content on the internet. So blowing a hole in it would lead to a lot of unintended consequences. Now, there's a part of Section 230, which is the reason it's in the crosshairs in the first place, that shields social media companies from liability for stuff that's posted on their platform. That's the part that everyone's up in arms about. And all too often, people make it out like that's all there is to Section 230. That's not all there is to Section 230. It applies to a lot more than that. And if you actually read the thing, it's clear that we shouldn't blow a hole in this. Instead, we should have new policy that meets the moment. That's my take on it. And here's this new policy that's attempting to meet the moment, or an attempt at some new policy that would actually meet the moment. The Algorithmic Justice and Online Platform Transparency Act of 2021. This is between Ed Markey and Doris Matsu out in California. So the bill would prohibit platforms from using algorithms that discriminate based on protected characteristics like race and gender. It would empower the Federal Trade Commission to review platforms' algorithmic processes and create a new interagency task force. Platforms would also have to explain to users how they use their algorithms. Now, here's what's interesting. Big Tech responded, they don't like this, which, by the way, that makes you think it's probably an okay policy. Big Tech doesn't like it. That means it's probably good. Here's the excuse that CEO Adam Kovacevic, I'm probably mispronouncing that name, Adam Kovacevic, Chamber of Progress founder. No one wants tech to exacerbate racial inequality or deprive people of opportunity. One approach would be expanding our existing civil rights and discrimination laws in housing, employment, and credit. That's called passing the buck, folks. That's called hey, red herring, let me bring up something different entirely to avoid us from any accountability. Now, here's the other thing he says. There's some danger that fully lifting the hood on tech algorithms could provide a roadmap for hackers, Russian trolls, and conspiracy theorists. Another straw man. Oh, if we can't tell you what we're up to, because if we do, then shadier actors than even us will know. That's basically what they're saying. That's the excuse that they're giving. What's your take on all this?
I'm 100% for free speech. That's why back when everybody was like, well, not everybody, but a lot of people were happy that Twitter kicked off Trump. I was like, if they can do that to him, who else are they going to do it to? And we've seen more people get kicked off. But in reference to like social media, like the algorithm is a huge problem on all social media platforms. Like if I go on Facebook right now, I see the same people's posts. I have like over 400 friends on Facebook, but I always see the same people. I never get to see the other ones. But the algorithm is a problem. Like we see it on YouTube, we see it on Twitter. The same people pop up, and especially when it comes to independent media, there's been suppression with that, like on YouTube, especially since like Biden won. It's really hard to find people if you weren't already like subscribed to them. And it's just problematic. Like some of the videos that I make that get flagged, I'm seriously like, why was that flagged? Like I'll go back and watch it and I'm like, there's no profanity, there's none of that. And I'm like, oh, I figured out what it was. I had the word policing in the title. It's little things like that like the way these platforms are designed, it's like they're designed to now they are meant to be family friendly. I guess like family friendly content, anything that's outside of that. Or if I talk about something with CIA, FBI, they're going to flag it. Anything that deals with intelligence, they're going to flag it. I can't talk about Julian Assange. They're going to take it down.
Mm-hmm. So here's some other specific things to this policy so far. And this is from Markey's website. Prohibit algorithmic processes. Okay, so we already talked about that. Establish a safety and effectiveness standard for algorithms. Now, here's an interesting part. Require online platforms to publish annual public reports detailing their content moderation practices. Create an interagency task force comprised of entities including the FTC, Department of Education, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Department of Commerce, and Department of Justice to investigate the discriminatory algorithmic processes employed in sectors across the economy. So, I mean, just my initial reaction is that there's still more to be done. I don't think this goes far enough because I think we need to just make these platforms public utilities. And I think we need to have laws in place that they need to follow the free speech laws of the United States. That's what I think needs to happen. But this is a step in a better direction while not blowing a hole in something that could lead to a bunch of unintended consequences.
Yes, agreed. Especially about like the discriminatory practices, because that's another one that like myself and like Nick from FHL, we've talked about this. We look at like the analytics. And so we can see the difference of if, depending on the subject that we talk about, how many people actually get to see that video and how many people don't get to see the videos if we're talking about something like policing, or if we're talking about something like, if we put the word Black like in the title of our videos, those videos are suppressed. So the algorithm that YouTube actually has actually works against Black content creators. And a lot of people don't know that. It's one of those things that as the audience member, you don't get to see that. But those of us who actually create the videos, we see it when we look in YouTube Studio and we look at the analytics.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just use Trump as an example. So when they, and usually when people ask me like, oh, are you happy Trump got kicked off of Twitter? I'm like, well, I'm not happy at the system that's in place that allowed that to happen. Because my take on it is, look, if Trump violated free speech laws, I'm okay with him being deplatformed for violating free speech laws. That we have free speech laws. You can't incite violence. There's certain things you can't do. If he did that, then I'm fine with him being deplatformed. But who gets to decide if he did that or not?
Right.
Well, Jack Dorsey and his buddies do. Mark Zuckerberg and his buddies do. They have no qualifications to be making those decisions. So they have no, I mean, if you read the explanation they gave, like they had no burden of proof there. So, if Trump did in fact incite violence or violate a free speech law, well, okay, there should be consequences for that, just like there are consequences like that for anyone who violates those laws. But that's not up for a bunch of Silicon Valley plutocrats to decide, whether it's Trump or anyone else. And so that's kind of where I'm at on it. So the fact that they're calling for more transparency here, that is a good thing. But just allowing a report is not enough because, well, but who's to stop them from moderating content the way they are? If it's like, oh, well, you got to publish the report and explain yourself. Well, they'll come up with some bullshit PR. They'll
Right.
come up with some bullshit PR. But what are you really going to do to make them change the way they're behaving? Because that's what needs to happen. They have entirely too much power that
Mhm.
they're just straight up unqualified to have. And by the way, they could voluntarily do all this. They could just say, we just hired, I mean, they got enough money. They could hire like constitutional law experts on their staff to make sure people follow the free speech laws of the United States and to be able to have like a transparent process whenever there's any type of content moderation whatsoever. They choose not to. They don't want to. They'd rather
Yep.
just go where the money is. They'd rather just go where their bread is buttered. And, I mean, even kicking Trump off Twitter was a PR move. We all know it. It was they knew it made them look cool. They knew it. I mean, that's why they did it. They didn't do it because I mean, maybe he did violate a free speech law. I don't know. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. That's for a court of law to decide, not regular people just on the internet. But they don't care whether he did or not. They just,
But
it was
I
just
have
a PR move.
I have a question for you about that. If let's go back and let's pretend Trump won.
Mm-hmm.
Does Trump still get kicked off Twitter?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I wasn't for him being kicked off Twitter. But let's say there was a transparent process and they decided that Trump violated, a free speech law. Like, let's say that actually, let's say it was actually handled the way it should have been handled, where they decided Trump violated a free speech law. And I guess had he won, none of that would have happened because like the claims they made was that he incited violence that led to January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
That's the claim that they made. So had he won, like he probably wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. But, just for hypothetical sake, let's say he did something else that was deemed like a violation, like he defamed somebody, he had some kind of incite to violence, whatever it was. And they decided that he violated a free speech law. It was taken to court and he lost. I mean, again, this is like, we're talking fantasy land right now, by the way.
Yep.
This isn't how the world works. Like this is like a fantasy. This is the way the world ought to be. This is a total hypothetical, but Trump violated some free speech law and he lost in court. I think that he should be removed from public office if something like that were ever to happen, him or anybody else. If you violate a free speech law, which we have pretty, it's hard in a lot of ways to actually violate free speech laws in the United States. Because they have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you defamed somebody, that you incited violence. So like we have, and I actually think our free speech laws are pretty freaking good. There's a lot of things about the United States I don't like. I think our free speech laws are actually pretty well constructed for the most part. I mean, none are perfect here or anywhere else, but I think they're pretty solid. So I think if you are found in a court of law to be in violation of them, if you hold public office, whether you're the president, a city council member, a mayor, or anything in between, you shouldn't hold public office anymore. That's what I think. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. I just think that this was kind of like social media's way of saying, like, when Twitter took them off, and then I think Facebook was after that. Forget which order it went into, but I think this was their way of saying that this is now Biden's America.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Because Because think
I
about all
think
the
they're
things
just
that. Oh,
I
go
just
ahead.
think they're more self-interested than that.
Because I'm like, think about all the things that Trump has said, like on social
Sure.
media over the years. And it seemed like to me, it was only when at that point we knew that Trump was not going to win, then it was like, okay, let's get rid of this guy now.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think well, I mean, I guess that kinda goes into the whole marketing angle too then, right? I mean,
Mhm.
doesn't that also bleed into the whole, like, "Ah, this is a good business decision. We're gonna kick him off. Get the press releases ready."
Yep.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, like, that's why, like, when people try to focus on, like, "Oh, Facebook does this," it's like, a lot of times they miss the big picture where it's like, Facebook harvests your data and they try to just massage your confirmation bias, whatever it is,
Mhm.
because they want you to stay on Facebook.
Yep.
That's what they want you to do. They want you to stay on Facebook. So, if you like, right wing content, they will feed you right wing content that they deem acceptable. Now, if it's out of their lines of acceptability, that's a different story. If you like left wing content, they will feed you left wing content that they deem acceptable. If it's out of their line of acceptability, that's a different story. And that's just what they do because they want your data, they want as much of it as possible, and they want you to stay on the site. That's why
Yep.
they suppress links from any other website. They suppress YouTube links no matter what your YouTube video is about. It could be, about Syria or a cat video. They still suppress that YouTube link because they don't want you clicking off Facebook.
Yep. That's true.
So we'll see. I mean, we'll keep an eye on this policy. Right now, it's still an outline and we'll see where it goes. But I am, again, cautiously optimistic. That should just be the title of today's show. Cautiously optimistic. Here's a few things to be cautiously optimistic about. But I am cautiously optimistic that we're seeing policy, that actually meets the moment instead of all these terrible ideas that will take us backwards. I am relieved to see that because thus far we have seen on both sides, by the way, from both Republicans and Democrats, horrible tech ideas that would take us backwards.
Mhm.
The Safe Internet Act was a terrible idea that has already led to some consequences. That's what Amy Klobuchar put through. Trump's plan to gut Section 230 was a terrible one. Oh, and by the way, guess who else is in favor of gutting Section 230? Joe Biden. They're both for it. So, anyway, cautiously optimistic. We'll keep an eye on this bill. And so I want to talk about you. You are part of the Fred Hampton leftists now. And are you the newest addition?
I am. So myself and Meg.
Okay, cool. So how did that happen?
So it's interesting. Like I actually knew Nick before FHL started
Hmm.
via Twitter, and we had a lot of tweets that were in common. So that's actually how I met him. And then through Nick, I met Compton J, who started the Populist Voice Network and helped with Nick co-found Fred Hampton Leftist. At the time, I already had my podcast. And so I went on to their show. They came on to my show. We did that with a couple of the hosts. And then it was literally a couple of days ago after I had RJ on, we did a live stream talking about the three Bs, Biden, Bezos, and Bernie. And a couple of days after
That's fun.
that, um, RJ reached out to me and asked me if I had time to chat. And I was like, sure. I didn't know what it was about at first. I was like, oh, what is this about? And it was a Zoom call, and they asked if I would be interested in joining them because they really liked my content and they were looking at like analytics, and they felt like a lot of us, I think we were doing some like similar things. Like I was interviewing people that they interviewed and vice versa. And in terms of our political um, arena, we are pretty much, I would say politically, we're all on the same spectrum.
Hmm.
We are, further left than Bernie. We're further left than some of the leftist commentators that you will see, and we didn't see a lot of people in that space. And so they asked me if I was interested in joining, and I was like, Absolutely. I would be honored to. In fact, I'll be with Nick today on his show as a co-host.
Well, that's awesome, and congratulations. And yeah, I mean, I remember Nick told me about the project, I think on this show, like right before it started, and I was super stoked for it, and I love everything I've seen from Fred Hampton Leftist so far. I was on the show myself. I had a blast. I can't wait to do it again. And I've had Jay on this show. I've had Nick. I've had Rome, which
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
guy's like on the road doing mutual aid his way across the country. He's like a real life Robin Hood, that guy.
Hmm. Agreed. Rome was like probably the second person that I interviewed when I started my podcast. So yeah, it's interesting. We all kind of knew each other, and then when FHL started, we all like started to realize that we did have a lot of things, a lot of similarities in terms of our content and what the message that we wanted to get across.
So, what made you a lefty?
Oh boy, I blame it all on Obama. I really do. Like, I was one of those people, the 2008 election, I was really excited about Obama. I believed him when he said that we're going to bring about change. And yes, we can. And, after his first term, I just felt duped. I felt like, man, how did I fall for this? Why did I believe this guy? Um, and then
So,
I said,
was it by 2012 you were done, or
by 2012, the problem with 2012 was I honestly did not want to vote for Obama in 2012. But the person he ran up against, I was like, "Oh God, Mitt Romney."
hmm.
And back then I had this belief that like it would be bad for me not to vote. So I voted for him again, and then his second term I was just like, "Okay, now you've had plenty of time to make changes." And I just felt like Obama really didn't I felt like he was passive. I didn't feel like he was aggressive, and I felt like there was more that he could do, especially when it came in reference to policing, because Ferguson happened under his presidency. And it was really disappointing to me to see that he chose to militarize the police. And that was something I was heavily against. After Obama, I was just like, I can't. I can't. And I didn't know where I fit at that point. I was like, I don't really like Democrats. I don't really like Republicans. Like, I guess I'm an independent, but there's no independent that I could vote for. And so for a while politically, I just felt like I was just stuck like in the middle. And then it was when Bernie ran in 2016 and I started to feel like, yeah, this guy is saying everything I've been feeling and he's running for president. But then I also realized he was running against Hillary Clinton and I knew that she was going to beat him. And that's sad and that's unfortunate, but I knew it because I knew about the Clintons. I know Hillary has a lot of money, a lot of corporate backing. I knew that she would beat him, and she did. And when Bernie ran again the second time, I was like, no, we're going to take it all this time. I really, really thought that this time around he was going to have a chance to win. And we almost got there, but then that goes back to Super Tuesday and my disappointment of Elizabeth Warren, which
That
I
was
could
so
talk a lot
painful.
about.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
it's still hard for me to even talk about it. And look, you know, I, and I know we're both in agreement on this. Bernie is very far from perfect, but but again, he would have been a transformational presidency. And when you see the way they cheated him twice, it's okay that they're not going to let us have a transformational presidency. They took it from us twice, and Bernie builds. You know, there was such a movement that happened around Bernie Sanders because he was just in the right place at the right time at the right moment. And I'll always be grateful that it happened because he made so many of us realize we're not as alone as we thought we were. And
Right.
that is a good thing. It's just now, because I mean, it's very easy to get frustrated and like angry and I get frustrated on a daily basis. We all do. But when you take a step back, you realize, all right, in the big scheme of things, we've only kind of had this awareness that we're not just like alone in the wilderness like we thought we were as just lefties who live in the United States. we've only had this realization for about 5 years. And part of that was spent in a frickin' pandemic.
Yep.
So I think it's somewhat reasonable that we're still in this sort of like, you know, we're sort of in this Twilight Zone space where we're kind of like, well, there's more of us than we thought, but what the hell do we do now?
Right. Right. We don't really have a leader anymore. Like when Bernie suspended his campaign, there went our leader. So we don't have anybody that's really leading this. And that's why you see people, there's a lot of infighting sometimes, like on the left. And
Sure.
it's hard when you don't have anybody leading the movement anymore.
Well, the leader can't be, in my opinion, I want to get your opinion on this. The leader cannot be somebody who holds office.
Right.
What we really need is our Eugene Debs, our Lucy Parsons, our Emma Goldman. That's who we need. We don't need more, I mean, it's good to have people in office who will be the tools for change we need them to be. Like
Mhm.
that's a good thing. I want to see more progressives in office. I want to see a viable third party. I, want to see progressives win by any way possible, but that's just one piece of the puzzle and an over amplified one at that. We need an outsider to
Yeah.
really lead a movement that I think is only going to be viable with a general strike. What do you think?
I agree at this point. I mean, I know some people still have hope that the way to do it is through the Democratic Party. I don't necessarily believe that because of what we've seen the past couple years with the squad. I think that at this point, like you said, we need somebody from the outside, and we need somebody that is not going to have to answer to uh, just corporate or just to anybody like or government. We need someone that doesn't have to answer to government or corporations. And when you look back on all the big, like successful movements in this country, that's what we had. If you look back on the civil rights movement, if you look back on the women's movement in this country, they were successful because we didn't have someone, like you said, that was a politician that led those movements. We had people who really had nothing to lose. And if it meant that they would have to give their lives for it, they were willing to do that. And that's really what we need. We need everybody to like come together. And to do that, you're going to need people who are not also on the left. You're going to have to get people from the right and people in the center in order for this to be successful.
I agree with you 110%. I mean, even if you want to take the New Deal, we didn't get the New Deal because FDR felt like being a nice guy. We
Right.
got the New Deal because the labor movement and the communists and the socialists and the anarchists and the working class and everything in between, they got along just well enough. I'm not saying they agreed on everything. They didn't.
Right.
But they got along just enough to be a movement to be reckoned with, where FDR realized, okay, we got to give some concessions or they're out there with their frickin' pitchforks. And he knew that, and we got a New Deal. It's time for something like that to happen again. I'm not saying we have to sing Kumbaya and agree on everything. God knows
Mhm.
we don't. But we got to get along just enough to have a true movement. And, I know people who think that reforming the Democratic Party is possible too. And I recognize that we are both calling for very tall glasses of water. Reforming the Democratic Party is a very tall glass of water. Having a viable alternative is also a very tall glass of water. I'm not implying either one is easy. It's not. I just think a third party would be more viable, especially when you see things grow for things like ranked choice voting. And which, by the way, Massachusetts leading the way there.
Yeah, we're really trying. It didn't, unfortunately, it didn't pass on the ballot this past election, but honestly, that's because a lot of people didn't understand the question. And also, it wasn't advertised as much as the other ballot questions. I
Of
think that was done on
course.
purpose.
Yes, of course it was.
So yeah, I was really pulling for that one. I was hoping it was going to pass, but it didn't. And another interesting thing about ballot questions in Massachusetts, most people don't know this unless they live here, but when legalizing marijuana was on the ballot, that barely passed.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that. Why do you think that is? Is it just
Some
because
people,
there is?
it's just interesting. Like some people said that they didn't want to walk down the street and smell marijuana. Some people said if we legalize it, then people are going to be smoking weed outside everywhere all the time. That's not what's happening. Most people buy it at a shop and they take it home.
This is the
Um,
shittiest excuses I've ever heard. I just don't want to smell it. I don't. When I walk around downtown Boston, all of the smells are 100%. I prefer to smell. I mean, you walk around the city, there's all kinds of smells. But pot, that's the disqualifier. That
yep.
that's the straw that broke the camel's back. Pot. I don't mind. What all do you smell? Garbage, urine. I mean, you name it. In any. I mean, Boston's a very clean city. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying any city where there's a lot of people, you're going to have some unpleasant smells. And
Yep.
by the way, skunks are a thing.
Yes.
So guess what?
Yeah. Young people pushed it over. Almost every time, young people were the ones that came out and they pushed it over. So it passed, and now that we have shops here, I don't hear people complaining as much anymore about it. So
You should do a survey. You should go, is the
Mhm.
smell unpleasant for you? Were you one of the smell voters? Were you what? I just the smell. I just can't. I know that there's an archaic drug war that has made criminals out of people who should be free and contributing to society and have their lives back. But the smell. I mean, come on, let's bring it back to the smell. I know that this is just an archaic scam that has just made a bunch of plutocrats really rich who are getting rich off of exploiting other people. But the smell, I just can't get over this. I'm glad I don't know any of those people. I'm glad I don't know any smell voters. I'm glad for it.
Yeah, that one was one we were really watching, and we were like crossing our fingers because we were just like, oh, is it gonna pass? Is it gonna pass? But it did. And like I said, now that we have the shops here, I don't hear as many people, some of those same people complaining about it now. So
Well, Sabrina, if I live anywhere else in the United States ever, outside of California where I'm at now, I think Massachusetts is the only place I'd go. That my wife's family's up there, so I think that's the only place I would ever potentially go. So thanks for keeping it cool for me.
anytime.
Where can people go to learn more about you and to subscribe to everything you got going on?
Definitely. You can find me on Twitter at Sabby Sabs with the number 2. And you can find me on YouTube. My channel name is Sabby Sabs. That's 2 words. You can also find me on Spotify, Substack, iHeartRadio, and Facebook. I have a Sabby Sabs podcast Facebook page.
You make it easy. Check it out, Sabby Sabs. Do you wanna greet someone's pet with me? Do you have any pets?
I do not, but I want a
Oh,
puppy.
okay.
I'm working on that.
What's stopping you?
I don't have a fence yet.
Oh, all right. Okay. So you have a yard but no fence?
Yep.
All right. All right. That's fair. That's fair. I was going to say it's a decision away. Animals need homes right now because of the pandemic. Animals really need homes right now. So if you're thinking about a pet and you can have one, now's the time. Now is the time to get that puppy or kitten that you've been thinking about. Is your husband pro puppy too, or is he like,
We're definitely pro puppy. I'm not a big fan of cats. I want a pet that I can play with.
you can play with cats. You don't have to be a cat person, but as a cat person, I can say I play with my cat Lucy plays every day and she whines to play. She gets
Really?
Oh yeah, she gets mad. She hurt herself not too long ago. She missed a jump and she's a little older, so I was pretty worried and I took her to the vet. She's okay. But the vet was like, try to get her to rest as much as you can, even cage rest her if you can. And I said, that's for sure not going to happen. She will, lose her shit if I keep her in a cat carrier. So I had to try as much as I could. Now she's a cat. She still loves to just jump everywhere and doesn't care. But I did my best and she would want to play and I wouldn't play with her. I'm like, you have to rest. If you rest in a couple days, you can play again. And she got mad. She would want, and I'd pet her and I'm like, oh yeah, you want to, and she's like, no, You goofball. I don't want. We just did the affection thing. I'm not in snuggle mode. I'm in play mode. You know this. You know that's what I want. You're neglecting me. And so now I'm just mad. Now I'm going to pout. Now I'm not going to give you no affection, no playtime. I'm neglecting you. Here's my butthole. I'm walking away. So she was, yeah, you can totally play with cats. But here's the pet we're saying hello to today. We're going to say hi to Comrade Burb, you're up. Lando, Shayla, Wakabi, Shuri, Simon, and PK. I don't know if those are dogs or cats. You don't tell me if they're dogs or cats. So we'll say that they say both. All right. So Lando says meow or wolf. Chella says meow or maybe wolf. Kabi says meow and wolf maybe. Shuri says meow, maybe wolf. Simon, meow, maybe wolf. PK says meow, maybe wolf. Lucy for sure says meow. She says meow. And she says hello to all of Comrade Burb's animals. And I say peace. And Sabrina says peace. And Sabrina's future puppy says wolf. And I'm so excited to be home with Sabrina. And what's your husband's name? Can you tell me? Greg. I am so happy to be home with my mommy and daddy, Sabrina and Greg. You gotta come back on the show when you get this puppy now.
I do. I would love to.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this. And yeah, everybody check it out. Sabby Sabs. We'll be back Monday. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Mutual aid, general strike. Peace.